We'll get started. All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming and joining MJ and I today as we have the great opportunity to spend some time with you guys and talk a little bit about how we can work on our speech sounds with our children at home. There's a lot of little things that maybe that will be new to you guys that maybe you haven't thought about, and there'll be some other things that I do that, and that's great because there probably are a lot of strategies you're already using. So my name is Daryl Graham, and I'm one of 5 speech language pathologists that works for Holy Spirit School Divisions. Some of you I know from working with your children, and some obviously are at the other schools within the division. I work with children all the way through grade levels, primarily spending a lot of time in the early learning programs in kindergarten, grade 1, 2, 3, early primary. All right, MJ.
And I recognize some faces as well. I'm MJ Kabayama, and I'm one of the family support facilitators. What I do, part of my role, I guess, is to support families, and it could be with resources, things that are happening in the community, or under the guidance of the speech pathologist is working with speech with the children, or even just making materials that are taken into the home that families are using.
All right, so we're just going to start off with prayer. So if you can all join me. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Dear God, together you have blessed us with the joy and care of children. Give us your strength and guidance as we work together to help them grow. We thank you for the opportunity to gather together as a learning community, and we ask your blessing on all of us as we continue on this journey. Amen. In the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. All right. So the first thing I'm going to start with, and hopefully you guys will be able to see our kind of revamped system here, but the first thing I thought we could talk about is things you don't need to worry about. So I'm just going to jot down 3, well, I'll probably put down 4 things here. And so if everybody can see that. So typically when we're looking at children, especially in the early learning programs, and even into kindergarten, there's certain sounds that are difficult for them in general. If I walked into an early learning program and had to listen to those children, there would be a lot of children that would have difficulties with the R sound. So they say wabbit for rabbit. And even when you say, oh, I heard you say wabbit. No, I didn't say wabbit, I said wabbit. That R is a later one for sure. The TH sound, so think for think, and then the V, so a stove for stove. You might find that children have those errors. And sometimes we do have those little lisps where those tongues want to peek out for those particular sounds. So if a child typically has these sound errors, even if they have all of these sound errors, they usually are still able to be understood. If we look at the speech language research and we look at sounds that children, say age 4 or 5, can still have some difficulties with, I can include more on this list. So I'm just going to do that really quickly here. So we have like the SH sound, like a sh. We have the ch sound, and we have the j sound. And, we might still be having a little bit of difficulties with those K sounds. So now all of a sudden, my list of not to worry about has grown, right? And so you see that we also have to think about the number of errors that a child is having, and that can have an impact on their speech. And I just did a couple of sentences here, and I'll see if you guys... So if we just look at that R, TH, and V sound in a lisp, I'm going to read a sentence, and I bet you guys will be able to figure out what I might be saying. So it might be tricky to do this with all the errors. Let me try. I think the stove is not working. So probably everybody can, I think the stove is not working. I'm not sure how many 3 or 4-year-olds would say that sentence, but it was one I came up with. So it's pretty understandable. If we take a look at another sentence, and so we're adding in like a K. Oh, I forgot my L sound, because some kids in kindergarten, early learning can have troubles with the L. So I'm going to read a sentence that has all of those errors in it, and then you're going to see how all of those errors can have more of an impact. The Wayan and Tama dot to see the sat in the ocean. Anyone who want to take a guess at what I might have said there? You can unmute. So the lion and camel got to see the shark in the ocean. So again, you can see the impact of the number of errors on a child's speech sounds. So just back to my trusty notes here. So when we do look at that, we want to make sure that we are worrying about those sounds when we have lots of errors. And so typically, maybe a lot of the children that you have a lot of those speech error sounds. A lot of the sounds we are working on, and these are going to be super familiar with you guys, like the S blends. So a lot of times the words like stop or spoon or smile or snow become top, poon, mile, and no. So we're practicing that. The K sound is another common one. The F sound is another common one. The S sound. And there's sometimes some less common error sounds that children have difficulties with. So they might leave off sounds at the end of their words, or they might leave off sounds at the beginning of their words, or they might take all of their sounds like S's and F's and make them into T's and D's. So those type of errors can make a child really difficult to understand, and sometimes they can be a little bit more of a challenge to kind of correct and support. But the key is, how difficult is a child to be understood? And as parents, you guys are probably thinking, oh, I know a lot. I can kind of figure out what they're saying, but when grandma and grandpa come over, maybe they're not quite sure. Or it's amazing how many siblings can translate for these kids, right? So they can help grandma and grandpa. So if there's other brothers and sisters, they get used to that pattern as well. Or maybe an aunt or an uncle or some other family that don't see them very often. So the general rule in speech pathology has been, if you're a 3-year-old, you should be able to understand 75% of what they're saying. And if they're a 4-year-old, we should be able to understand all of what they're saying. Like I say, you might kind of get some odd words that might be tricky. We will be having this video available later. So if you do want to watch it again to take a look at it, and I will make sure that the notes that I'm reading from and referring to today can get sent out to you guys as well. So you don't have to worry about taking too many notes. All right. So let's take a look at some of the things we think we need to think about when we're supporting our kids. And again, the people who've had the MJ Kabayamas and the Christy Crookses come out to the home and support you guys with some of the speech sounds. Some of this might be familiar or through some communication with me, but some of it might be new. So we'll just kind of cover a few things here. So first thing we need to think about is, how easy is it for the child to be able to make the sound? So if we're looking at the L sound and the child says, I really love that, right? Then and we get that W for that L, it might be tricky for them to use it in that sentence. But if we take it down to the word level and we just say, oh, let's try that word, love, right? And we model and pop that sound out, then they might be able to do it. So when we're reminding them of their sounds at home, we want to just make sure that we're not asking them to do something that's just a little bit too difficult for them right now, and that we want to take it back and focus on it maybe in a word, or maybe we want to try it in a little phrase, and we can say, I love, right? So I love you might want to say. And so then that gives them that opportunity to practice that sound that way. Another thing we want to take a look at is, where do they have the most success with their sound? And so when I think of my own son, and we were having difficulties with the F sound, or my little rabbit sound, where I put my top teeth on my bottom lip, we had an old couch downstairs and we thought we could go down there and jump on it and go. Amazingly enough, he didn't bite his lip open or anything, because as you're trying to do that sound and jumping, could happen. But anyway, so we were practicing it. And so what we had the most success was trying it at the end of words. So as we were doing our jumpy sounds, off, 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 and we're jumping off the couch, rather than the word 5 or 4, how old he was at the time. It was a little bit trickier because it was just easier that there was all these other sounds and then I do my sound, rather than I'm going to do my sound first and then I got to worry about all these other sounds. So sometimes you might find when you're practicing and supporting your kids at home that, hey, they kind of have that sound a little bit better at the end. So maybe that's where I can kind of support them initially and give them some direction and guidance, and you'll find that it will typically then flow into the other word positions. Being honest with the kids. So, and which is kind of also being specific. So it's like, oh, good try. Let's try again. It doesn't necessarily give them that information. It's like, oops, what did we forget to do? We forgot to let our air out. So maybe we heard a B rather than that F sound, or we forgot our snake sound, right? So giving them a little bit more information about what they need to do to get that sound correct Just like anybody, when we get that feedback, sometimes if that little bit more specific feedback with a lot of these visual supports can be quite helpful. Each sound, every speech pathologist does things differently. I tend to kind of have my little pattern of what I do with speech sounds. So I like to do the snake sound. So as a reminder for them to remember their snake. And even when they're practicing it, I'll go stop, right? And pop out that next sound, or just go stop, right? Just to remind them. And so when you find the kids are starting to catch on to that, they might start to do this at home. And maybe some of you have already seen that, right? They're helping themselves get that, and that will go away. Don't worry, that won't stick with them. Or sometimes they'll go stop, stop, stat, now, right? Like they kind of add it to their whole little sentence if you're at sentence level. So just know that those kinds of things work their way out. Don't correct them every time too. So that's another thing, right? Taking those opportunities to correct them when you're noticing, and then sometimes let it go. Sometimes we'll talk about a few specific strategies in about a minute or so, and we'll kind of revisit that. Only correct the errors you're focusing on. So some kids will have multiple errors. So say they're dropping their sounds off at the end of their words and they're having troubles with their L. So a word like lion might come out as waya. So they don't have the N, they don't have the L. So if your focus is going to be reminding them of their L that they can do, then we can say, oh, let's try that word again, lion, right? And if they say lia, it's like, wow, good job, you remembered your L. And then you can move on. If they're at the point where they're consistent with both, you could do the same thing and you could say lion and they go lia and you say, great job, you got that L sound. Let's see if we can even put that little N sound at the end that we've been practicing on at school or with MJ when she pops in. And then it's lion, right? And then kind of emphasizing and supporting it that way. So taking those opportunities to remind them, and we'll talk a lot about some activities you can do and some ways that you can kind of embed it into the day-to-day activities you're doing in and around the house. I think it's just that last part that I said I was going to get to in a minute. It's about a minute later. So what we can do is we can just model it for them, right? We can just, as we're reading, we can even just say, yeah, the lion and the leopard, and they went to Lethbridge and the library and they were reading their books. Or we could add some emphasis. The lion and the lizard and the leopard went to the library in Lethbridge, right? So while we're reading books or while we're talking, we can kind of add that emphasis to the sounds when we're hearing them make the error, or in our own speech and language when we're with them. We can remind them. So we can do something like, oh, let's try that sound again. Let's remember to lift that tongue up for our L sound. La, because a lot of times certain sounds, I may as well do that right now. I'll do not only the gesture that goes with it, but a reminder of what they need to do for their placement of their tongue. So lift up our tongue behind our top teeth. And then I like to talk about superhero strength. And I know there's some Captain America fans out there and Hulk fans out there, right, amongst your children. Black Widows, we got all those kind of superheroes. So we want to lift that tongue up, superhero strength, keep that tongue up, lion, right? So we're showing them, we're emphasizing, and that can help them. With the K sound, I call it my hammer hitting the nail sound. So it's like hopefully that's not too loud in everybody's ears out there, but kind of just tapping that sound. The snake sound is obviously my S. I do my rabbit sound for the F. I think we already talked about that. So top teeth on the bottom lip, just like Bugs Bunny, right? And letting that air flow out. So just giving them that information and that feedback and reminding them. And the other one that can work is choices. So it's like, oh, did you mean to say for or bore, right? And then it's, oh no, I meant to say for, right? So giving them the option and the choice sometimes can be a nice way to do it as well. All right, so did I mention about the chat? If anybody does have any questions or comments, feel free to.
You can remind again, yeah.
Yeah. Feel free to send those through, and Lynn can read those. We will allow a bit of time at the end, like I say, to have a conversation and answer any questions you might have. So MJ, take it away.
Okay. And yeah, please feel free to join in. It's the best way to have those conversations and stuff. Like, don't be shy. We're up here on camera having fun. So Daryl said that there's different ways to work on things. And one of them is a direct support. And when they mean some of you that I do sessions with, you kind of see what that means. I'm just going to grab a couple cards. So some of the direct support would be like using speech cards. Can you guys see what I've got there? So sometimes what we do is that we go through the cards, and like Daryl says, it depends what level that they're at, whether they're at the word level or two-word level or phrase level or sentence level. So depending on that, so this is very structured, that we're going to try to get the child to say the word. And like Daryl says, we're not going to correct it every time, but to be honest. So let's say they said ting. And then I'll say, oh, where's that S sound? And then they'll say ting. And I'll go, oh, I like how hard you're trying. So we still need our S, it's sting, and then I'd move on. Like Daryl says, we're not going to get them to keep saying it, because then that would cause frustration. But this is a very structured cue, using our speech cards, doing that. Another way to use a structured activity is you can use your speech cards and have two sets, and you could do like the memory game. So then just like the memory game, they flip one over, stop. And then they flip the other one over, stove. Oh, they're different. They're not the same. Let's pick another one. So it's just playing those different games, but it's still very, very structured. Another one that we've got actually is, let's see, Daryl. I don't know if you guys have very many games at home, but this is awesome. This is the buzz game. So perfect, even if it was the B word that they're working on. And it comes with some swords. So the child may say, like, they would pick a card each time, and then they would actually insert the sword for each card. But some kiddos, it's very, very distracting doing it this way. So we would say, you know what, we're going to do 5 cards and you'll get 5 swords. So you go through your 5 cards, give them the 5 swords. Okay, here we go. Push them in. And then we do 5 more cards until obviously the bee buzzes and pops out. That's another one. Or there's like the pop-up pirate game, things that are very similar with that. Let's see. This one is actually the kids love doing this one. And it's easy to make. So if you have like even a stick, I'm not sure if you guys can see this very good, with a magnet on the end. And then we put clips on our cards. So then we've got our speech cards, and all we do is have a little paper clip on it. So this is just giving another suggestion. So the kids would go fishing, they get their card. What card did you get? Let's see. Lamb. You've got the lamb. And then the kids would say it. And then you guys can take turn. And it's great working on lots of different things with the kiddos, turn taking, things like that. But they love to fish, having it stick there, pull it up and say their words. Daryl, what else do we got here? We
got that Candyland game, which for some kids, I know some kids, they would be more happy to do the Buzzy Bee, and maybe they're not into the board game things, but some of the older kids might be.
Yeah. So that's fantastic. So with the Candyland game, and I'm sure you guys know what it is, right? Do you guys all know what the Candyland is? Games are so awesome at this age to be playing as a family, because it just builds that turn taking and things like that. So this is the Candyland board, and here are cards. So you'd get a single color or a double color. So this works on a lot of other things too, other than speech. So the child would pick their speech card, say it first, then they could pick their Candyland card and then move along. And then of course they get their special treats. And this one we just happen to have is a Dora the Explorer kind. Then we have, sorry, am I going too fast or is this okay? Everybody's kind of understanding the means behind the, means behind our madness. Yeah, and so I just explained about the pop-up pirate one as well.
And we can do, yeah, sure, go ahead. That's a really neat one too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, I think maybe this will be my last one. I'm getting a little carried away.
No. I think it's good that we're sharing all those. And what we'll do is right after this, MJ, we'll pick a game and we'll just model kind of how a little session would be when you're working with the kids.
Of course, yeah. Yes. So actually, this one here is, I think we froze a little bit. Sorry about that, guys. This one here is actually using real items. So it's still structured, but they're using a real item. So it's just a little bit different. You can put it like even under on a cookie sheet, under what am I saying? Oh, a dishcloth or something like that. And then the kids can go under, or they could put it in a surprise bag and pull it out. So this is obviously working on our S blend. So we've got a spoon. This is a little keychain. Star. We've got a slipper, a spider. So kids just love feeling the real objects, and it builds in their vocabulary as well, is seeing the actual object. One other thing I was just going to say too is that even though we may not have the speech cards in the bathroom, but talking about structure, it could be the time that the child does the speech. So let's say maybe they're in the tub and that's the time. It's a structured time that they're going to do, and it could be literally with whatever toys are in the tub, but it's the bath time, structured time. Or the other time is maybe kids love mirrors. So they like seeing their mouth in the mirror. And, you know, if you have a turn and say, oh, look at my mouth, and they have a turn. So maybe right before they brush their teeth or right after they brush their teeth, it's just getting into that bit of routine. So the kids and typically kids love routine. Another structured way, and this one is so fun as well, is let's say we go around and we kind of hide the cards in amongst, and then the best part is that you go hunting them with a flashlight, and they've got to go through. It's almost like a little scavenger hunt, but we're looking for the cards. And kids love searching for things, and just adding, like maybe the lights are out and you've got your little flashlight. It just brings just something a little extra, something a little bit more exciting to them. So it's not just the same, oh my gosh, I have to say that again, because they're looking, hunting, it's kind of exciting. And you might say, hey, let's find 5 cards, and then say them. Instead of find a card, like they could put it in a basket and then, hey, we got 5, let's go say our speech sounds. Because some kiddos, it is distracting when you do each card, okay, and then they're too busy wanting to find the next one. So just slowing it down, gather 5 of them or how many ever you choose, and then having the speech little session there, and then go again and finding another one. And Daryl, I think we're going to talk about productions, right?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Good reminder. So when we are working on it, sometimes kids, and I see this even with the older kids, it's just like, okay, Mr. Graham has a set of cards he's brought in, right? And it's just like, okay, we're going to go through the cards. And then it's like, oh, he's going to make me go through the cards again. And oh, we're going to go through the cards again. So then it's like 3 times. But hey, if we do each card 3 times, and we've gone through the deck 3 times, so it looks shorter. It looks like we only got this small pile of cards that we need to do. So taking that opportunity to work on those productions, and you know, each card 3 times. If you've got 15 cards, that's 45 productions. That's a good number of productions. One of the things that we always want to be careful of is sometimes the games are so much fun, and you know what, there's so much language in the games, there's turn taking, there's so much happening, so don't get stressed about it. But sometimes you'll stop and you'll think, boy, we had so much fun in that game, we did like 5 S sounds. So it's just remembering that part of this is that focus for that speech sounds. And when I always look at speech, it's like a behavior, and if we want to change a behavior, we have to practice, and to practice we need productions, and for productions we need lots of productions so that we get our brain retrained to do these sounds in a different way. And then once that starts to come, then boom, away you go. Yeah. So maybe we'll pick an activity in a game, MJ. And how about I be the kid so I can give you a lot of hard time, and MJ will use all her wonderful skills for how she works with families at home. I won't give her too hard of a time.
You know, that's very interesting. So the speech pathologist is handing off his job is what I'm hearing. Okay.
We'll do 2 different activities. We'll switch it up.
Okay. So the first game, I think I kind of explained to you about,
I'll just,
Which
should I
game
turn
would you like
this a
to play,
little bit?
Mr. Darryl?
How about, do you want to do the beehive game?
I would love to do the beehive game.
Do you need me to pull this down just a little bit? There we go. That should work.
Okay, so
And
I'm
I'll
kind of
be
in here twice. I apologize.
Mic is attached to that one.
Oh, sorry, guys. Okay, so I'm just going to kind of slide it under. I think that'll work.
And which sound would you like to start with, MJ?
Do you know what? So we are actually going to start. I'm going to get a little different sound here.
Okay.
Daryl.
Ooh, that's an interesting one. So actually MJ picked a pack that we had off to the side, which is good because some children, they sometimes will turn their voice on for sounds. So a word like to might come out sounding like do. T and D are kind of cousin sounds. So if we look at how we make them in our mouth, t, t, duh, duh. Everything is the exact same in placement. It's just that we turn our voice on, or our voice box, vocal folds, whatever you want to call them, to get that sound. So for these kids, we might pick. And so what you're going to be listening for, and what MJ is going to be listening for, is do I say the D sound rather than the T sound? And then she'll need to correct and support me. And I think what we'll do is, if we can try, we'll model 3 times with each card as we're going through. Okay.
Sounds good. And so what I've done is I've already got my 5 swords. So I would say to the child saying, okay, look I've got my 5 swords. So my 5 swords. So then we are going to do 5 cards. Okay. So I've got my 5 cards here. I've got my 5 swords. So here we go. Okay. Are you ready? Okay. What do you see here?
So one quick question, SLP thing here. So we're at the point where the child is able to say the words on their own. We may have to model it first for them to get successful enough. So she might have said tape before I said it, but now we're to the point where I'm pretty good at it, and she might have to not remind me too much if I say these words on my own. So I'm going to say, for the first one, I'm going to say tape.
Oh, that was awesome. Can I hear that one more time?
Sure. Tape.
Oh, so good. Let's do it one more time, Daryl.
Tape.
Perfect. That's great. Okay, this might be a little tricky one. Let's take a look at this one.
Okay. Dop.
Ooh, so I heard dop. Can you try that again with your t, t sound?
Top.
Okay, that was good. Let's tell me that one more time.
Dop.
Oh, so close. Let's remember our t, t, top, and then we put it down. So I did not force him to do it correct it that time. Okay, he just heard me correct it. So it's like there, he's hearing it, and he was able to do it. Okay, now we've got this. Now this might be tricky.
I know that one. I'm good at that one. I can always get this one right.
Okay.
10.
Oh, nice. I heard that sound at the beginning. So what number did you say this was?
10.
And one more time, what number comes after 9?
10.
Good job. That's awesome. Aha. This is something that we have a bath in. What is this called?
Dub.
Okay, so dub. Remember, we want to do that t, t sound.
Tub.
Good job. What do we have a bath in?
Tub.
Tub. Oh, that's awesome. That great t sound at the beginning.
Good.
Okay.
Yeah, and we can. And what I liked about that was that reminder, right? We can say, "Good job. I like how you remembered your T sound. I like that." T, right? Oh, we forgot our T. All good reminders, right? And you're kind of switching it up a little bit and making it interesting too with the comments that we're using too. Yeah.
Okay, Daryl, we've got our last card before we
get to play my game.
We get to do the 5 swords. Here we go. Now this is a number, another number. Now you knew 10. I wonder if you know what this number is.
2.
Ah, what number is this?
Do.
Oh, do? Or did you mean?
2.
Yes, good job. I like how you went back and fixed that. And let's tell me this number one more time.
2.
2. That was fantastic. So you know what? We've got our 5 swords. Here you go.
All right, let's see.
Make sure you push him in hard.
Whoa, he popped up first thing.
And he popped up first thing. So typically, since they work so hard, I would say, you know what? I'm going to push this guy back down. Let's see if you can make him pop again. And then let him finish the swords, because he did work so hard. And if it popped and he still got the swords, it's like, oh man. So yeah, so if they're excited and that he popped, we're going to go, let's do 5 more words. So you just kind of, you'll know your own child's personalities and kind of follow their leads with that. Does that make sense?
And then just if you're finding that those words are getting easy, then we can kind of move up to a phrase. So we can say number 2. Right, and then they're going to try and remember that T sound after that word number. Or the next one there, MJ, would be blue tape. I mean, we could kind of switch it up, and sometimes you have to be careful as to what other word is in that phrase, because if you know, you pick another sound that they may have difficulties with, it could cause a little bit of difficulty. Yeah,
because I was thinking sticky tape, but if they don't have the S, ticky tape, right? But and then, like Daryl mentioned before, we would not correct them on the sticky. Yeah. Because that's not the word we're worried about. We're just worried about tape, the T. So
full tub. And then once those phrases, then we can kind of have them maybe repeat some sentences, or they can generate their own sentences and we can remind them. So it's like, the tub is full. Oh, we forgot our T sound. Let's try that again. So yeah, just knowing that just knowing the level that child is at. Sorry, I'm going out of picture, where that child is at. Okay. All right, so I think any questions about the structured part of it? No, okay. Sometimes it's helpful if you also kind of treat it like thinking of behaviors and trying to change things. And like when we go to the gym, we work out, right? So the first thing we do is warm up. So sometimes you might want to say, oh, we're going to work on our snake sound. So let's do 5 snake sounds before you start to work on that S ahead of time. And then they do their work. And then at the end, let's finish up by doing 5 awesome S sounds or 5 awesome st sounds, right? So kind of like warming up, getting them ready, doing the workout, right? All the work that they have to do in the fun games they get to play or the activities that you're doing. And then at the end, just kind of just winding it up. And then you can always remind them, and I'm going to be listening to your st sounds. And then just as a reminder. Yep. All right, so now we've got some other activities, MJ.
You know, so another little I guess activities, I'm sorry, so more structured.
Oh, yeah, sorry, not structured. Sorry, now, yes. Okay. Now we're going into things that you might have around the house, daily things that you're doing with the kids. And so ways that we can kind of fit it in where we're not necessarily sitting down, because to be honest, there are a few kids that I've worked with that are 3-year-olds, and well, actually a lot of kids, I shouldn't just say a few kids, where you need to do it within the context of your day-to-day, within the context of their play, right? Kind of pulling them out and working on it one-on-one just isn't the way that they're learning currently, right? Or where their interest is. And I think of a little guy that I worked with in the past. And so what we did was we played with cars, and he really enjoyed the cars. And so during playtime in the kindergarten, we would just do start and stop, right? And we would take our cars at the top of a ramp and we would go, okay, we're going to put him at the start. And then he'd say it. And then it's just like, okay, we're going to lift it up. Let's go start. And then we lift up the little gate, the car would go down. And then when it stopped, it'd say, oh, it stopped. Right. So there's lots of things that we can do to kind of fit it into the day-to-day. So that's kind of what we're going to talk about here now.
Yeah. Thank you for explaining that, Daryl. So another one is, I mean, what kids don't like bubbles? Like you might be working on the P sound for pop, pop. So then you just blow the bubbles and they can be running around, or you can say, let's say pop, 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 you know, how many times, and then blow bubbles and let them go. So just having that little bit of activity and not so sit down and structured like Daryl said. This one is a little bit of a sit down, hey, Daryl, I guess, but it's not structured with carts. Like Play-Doh. So even Play-Doh, it works on fine motors, it works on lots of things. So this one where you have rolling it out like a snake. And then Daryl had some great ideas. The snake's going to eat the snowball, yum, 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 like, you know, just playing with the kids. Or you can make a snail. Like there's just lots of things that you can explore with Play-Doh and try to do, or smash, like, just using, it's kind of just being creative and using the imagination. But we will be sending out suggestions as well, right? Because I know this is a lot of information, but kids love, or another one is that, you roll it out and then you make a circle if it's we're still working on the S sound or whatever. So yeah, the options are quite endless.
Yep, and you can, if it's F, you can feed 4 of the snowballs to the snake, right? And the snake's name could be Felix. So you can always get creative and have some fun that way too. Yep.
Absolutely. And I think the other one here, Daryl, if you wanted to explain this one.
Oh, yeah. So what we have here is we have just our book, and it's the Very Hungry Caterpillar. So I know that if you go through this book, there's actually a lot of L's in there because by the light of the moon and the little caterpillar, and he lay on the leaf. So there's lots of L sounds that are in this book. So it's kind of nice for that. But again, as we're reading, there's lots of opportunities to not only kind of go through the text and have the child listen, but to talk about the pictures and ask questions about what might be happening or what you think might going to happen next. Or when we get to the part where all those wonderful foods are available for him to eat, right? There's going to be tons of sounds that you're going to be able to support a particular child with, depending on what their sound is. So, you know, we've got our fruits that he eats through. So you got F for fruit, and then we get 4 and 5 when we get to the strawberries and the oranges. But when we get to the page where that caterpillar has all these wonderful things he can eat, there's all kinds of sounds there, like cupcake and ice cream, if you're looking at that K sounds. If you're doing those S's, like sausage, and then L for lollipop. So again, lots of opportunities within the books that we're doing to kind of practice our sounds too. And it maybe you only kind of point out or notice 2 or 3 of them through the book, right? It doesn't have to necessarily be something that we're worrying about every L that might possibly come along, or maybe even you think of something else beyond the book. What's something else in our house that starts with an L that you think our caterpillar might want to eat? So you can get creative and do things like that with the books, which is a lot of fun. But again, it just fits within some of the things that you're doing in a day-to-day. And and to be honest, if you are doing something like you're sharing a book at the end of the day, probably the last thing they would want, right? They just want mom or dad to read the book to them and to kind of talk about the story and the routine that comes along with that. So if there are just a couple reminders, that's probably good. But if it's, you know what, here's a book and we're going to sit down and maybe it's at a different time and unstructured time, and you're going to mention that we're going to see some of the sounds that you've been practicing on at school or with MJ when she comes to visit us online. So then it gives you that opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's great. And we all know how important and awesome it is to read books. So just the children hearing those sounds again and again is fantastic. So.
Yeah, and even like potato heads, right? We've got lots of, like you're building potato heads, there's lots of sounds that can pop up there, like especially if you're working on things like the sounds at the end of words. So if the child says ha for hat and off or on, it's like hat on, arm on, leg on, I guess it's shoes, but that's another opportunity to do it. I don't know if you want to speak to creations and crafts, MJ, that's probably more your side of things. But yeah, anything you want to add around that?
Do you know what? And just like anything that you're like, if it's the K sound, cut, 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 or snip, snip, snip. Yeah, there's lots of things to incorporate it throughout your day. The one I think the kids love that I was just playing with a few kids while we were waiting for a bus to come was I spy. Oh, and then you look around and you can, I mean, it could be anything in your house or when you're outside or when you're driving in the car. Oh yeah, you know what, Daryl put a good one on here too, is sorting the laundry. That, you know, the socks, you know, like just different things that you can just incorporate in the day. Or we're washing dishes in the sink, like just things right around your house. And this is necessarily not structured whatsoever, and just going with the flow, where you're having supper and there's or you're having breakfast with cereal, right? But just those exposure. Can you think of anything else there, Daryl?
Yeah, just kind of like taking those opportunities for so many of those words that pop up, right? Like spoon and fork, right? You've got your SPs and your Fs, and yeah, they just like naturally fit. So sometimes it's just kind of being aware of what you're already doing, right? And taking those opportunities to emphasize it a bit more. And if you want to make it a bit more structured, like setting the table, and we're going to put out 4 forks, and you know, and then it's like each time you set it down, fork, fork, fork. So again, just taking those opportunities. yeah, the I Spy one is awesome because, you know, a lot of times the kids say me instead of I. So then you have another opportunity for working on that I Spy. Yeah. Yeah, and I talked a little bit about just kind of some of the toys around the house, so playing with cars and S blends can show up in different places. So the car goes fast, where there's an ST at the end. So some kids will go fast, right? And then you can kind of remind them they're going fast. Of course, we're slowing it down to remind them of the word fast, but then they get faster and faster at saying it. Anyway, but yeah, so just taking those opportunities and kind of thinking of those sounds and where they might pop up. I will say, just the L sound, if you are practicing the L sound at home, and that's one of the goals that we're working on, is that the L at the end is a very different L than at the beginning and middle. So if we go a word like Paul, and if you say that, you can feel a lot of tension in the side of your tongue, Paul, very different L. And a lot of kids, even in kindergarten, still don't quite have that. But lion, it's a lot laxer. It's a little bit easier to make. Lion or pillow. So just know that sometimes it may be a bit trickier for some of those sounds. And then the R's and THs, you know, if they can do it, awesome, remind them. If not, again, they're later sounds. Yeah.
You know what, Daryl, I was going to say with a lot of the families that I do work with, the parents are very natural. And I think they just don't realize that they're doing these things. Like I'm just like going, wow, like what a skill that you're naturally doing a lot of these things and just making it in the forefront and thinking about it now, probably you'll realize, hey, I actually do some of these things, which is fantastic. So yeah, just keep doing what you're doing. And hopefully a little bit of this added some creativity into the way that you guys can be working on your speech sounds.
Yeah, and if there's any other materials or anything you want, you can feel free to reach out to the programs to get a hold of us, or reach out directly to MJ, myself, or Christy Crooks is the other home visitation support worker, or your SLP, lead teachers. There's lots of people you could reach out to, whoever you have your connection with. Sometimes it's just the program, right? And then they can direct you, but do feel free to reach out and we can get you what you need. All right, so I don't know if anybody has any specific questions. Feel free to either unmute and ask, or you can send in a chat question. Does everybody know how to do the chat?
Yeah. And since Daryl did probably an amazing job, there may not be any questions.
Oh. It's MJ that's the amazing one.
Yeah,
Like, and you guys at home, like when we look at kind of the support that your children are getting, right, with the program staff, and the program staff have that training and that expertise to support them within their daily activities. So it's exactly what we talked about today, right? That's happening in the program. They're reminding them of an ST, they're reminding them of an F, and those little things kind of can support and those kids going forward. And then yourselves coming to these workshops at your ISPs, asking questions, right? When you have those meetings with all of us around the table, taking the opportunity to have MJ come in and support you guys. Yeah, it takes all of us, but yeah, it's awesome to see the successes that we have with the children moving forward with all the supports.
And that speaks to a bit of that consistency too. So they're getting it here, they're getting it here, they're getting it here. So that's so neat, because then it just helps them explode and grow.
Yeah. All right.
Question. So
yes.
Like, yeah, like my son, I noticed like some of his words, and like he does mostly the TH sound, but I know like when you guys did, or the school did the assessment, it wasn't so much a concern for like the sounds of the words, but like one of the examples given was one of the pictures was someone holding an umbrella, and he was asked, well, what is that? And it's like, and he answered, so she doesn't get wet, rather than saying that's an umbrella. So like, how does that correlate into all of this?
Yeah, for sure. And that kind of looks at the language side of things. I'll definitely answer your question, but just as a little plug, we do have some upcoming language sessions as well, where we'll talk about expressive language, which is kind of the expressive words that are coming out. So the vocabulary they have, the grammar of their sentences, how they're answering questions. And then on the flip side is the receptive side. So their ability to understand information. So when we do look at the example that you had mentioned, is the child able to attend and understand the questions that's being asked. And so when a child is presented with a picture, it's a cue for them to be able to answer that question based on what they've heard, but it's also an opportunity for them to comment on what they're seeing if they're not fully understanding the question, if that makes sense. So they might be saying something or commenting on something about that picture. It could be just that's where their general interest is, or it could be that they're not understanding what it is that they're being asked. So they have the picture in front of them, so they're able to respond with something, and they want to, right? Like kids want to respond with the knowledge that they have. So that receptive piece. So sometimes what we need to do is work on what we call our WH questions. So and when we look at some of those basic questions, it's like look at a what question. Like there's so many different what questions. So what is it? What do we do with it? What is the person doing in the picture? What is going to happen next in the story? What is it that you like to eat? Those are all different types of what questions. So some children may have difficulties answering some of those, right? And they may kind of fall back on other information to be able to answer them. Yeah, and then we get into who questions and where questions and when questions and why questions as we kind of move through the developmental sequence. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think so. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, and a great question, because I think Christy and Daryl are planning to do a session on the language piece of it. So that would be fantastic. So I'm not too sure exactly. It's not set yet. We're kind of in ISP season right now, but yeah, for sure. When that comes out, we'll be sending the invite back out again. So and that would be more of the focus, hey? Yeah. Yeah, but thank you so much for asking. Yeah.
And there will, and just another mention too, we do have on some Fridays, we do have what we call book sharing sessions where we look at how to support language, not so much speech, but the language side of things. We had just finished one the other day on sparkling vocabulary, so supporting kids to develop their vocabulary. And I believe, Lynn, that might be something that's going to be available online for people to see if they were interested. But we will be doing one specifically on WH questions. So it'll be how to share books with children and focus on different kinds of questions. And the questions can go, like, some kids can fall back on getting the answer from the pictures, but if it's like, what's going to happen next, then they have to think of what they've kind of gone through in the story, or think of their own personal experience to kind of guess what's going to happen next. Or we'll talk about asking questions that go beyond the pictures as well, right? So that it looks at WH questions in different ways. So that'll be something too down the road that you can kind of keep a watch for. Yeah.
Lynn, I think I see one in the chat.
Sorry. I stopped the video. No, I didn't. Sorry, it was just a thank you to you both for all that you've done.
Well, thank you guys. Yeah, surely reach out if you do have any other questions or concerns. ISP meetings are coming up for a lot of you, so that's an opportunity to take that time to ask those questions. Yes, it's an opportunity for us to update where your child's at, but feel free to ask questions, because you've got us, or give us a call directly. Yeah.
Thank you guys so much for joining us, and hope you got something to take away from it. And yeah, we look forward to seeing you guys again.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank
Bye.
you.